With that, we are in week 2 of Skilled Trades Month with the STEM for Girls Club. And thank you all for joining us again this week. And JoJo Greeley is back for her second session. She's going to be with us every Monday with different guests each week going forward now. So this week we have Courtney Smith, who is a carpenter. So we'll hear from her. If you have any questions along the way, of course, there are gamification points up for grabs. So put your questions in the chat for additional gamification points. But with that, oh, and just one more thing is the worksheets as well. So you're on the second page of the worksheets to submit. So get those in as well for, again, additional gamification points. There's lots of points all over the place this month, so you can really rack them up. I'm pretty sure there's going to be over 100 points that you can get this month. So little by little, you'll get there and be able to buy whatever you like in the gamification shop. And feel free to suggest things as well. Send me a chat message if there's something that you think is appropriate, of course, that you might want to see in the gamification shop up for grabs. And with that, I will hand it over to JoJo Greeley, our construction electrician from the Office to Advance Women Apprentices, to get us started.
Thank you so much, Trina. I really appreciate the introduction. So glad to be back for week 2. Excuse me. I just want to acknowledge that I'm a white settler that lives, works, and plays on the Mi'kmaq and Beothuk territory. I hope the work that I do strengthens relationships. So thanks very much. I am from the Office to Advance Women Apprentices. Our mandate is to help women who are starting in skilled trades and to help them get their red seal. We talked a little bit last week about what apprenticeship is, so I won't touch on that, but that's what our office does. We help women who have decided to go in skilled trades to get through their apprenticeship. So I'm so excited to introduce today Courtney Smith, who has become a great pal and friend of mine for many reasons. Courtney is a carpenter, and I'm going to let her tell a little bit of her story, because you just talked a moment ago about Skills Canada and what your skills are. And I think something that we think about in skilled trades is we think that when you walk in that door, you should already know everything, or at least a bunch of things. And I love Courtney's story. So Courtney, if you can tell us where you're from, what your carpenter you are, and then just give us a little bit of your history of how you ended up in skilled trades.
Hi, thanks, Joanne. Well, my name is Courtney Smith. I'm from the small town of St. Anthony, Newfoundland. And I started my carpentry journey at the age of 28. I went to different schools beforehand and just, it wasn't for me. Quickly realized that I couldn't personally learn in big classroom sizes. So I chose CNA for that reason. And I like to do hands-on work. So I chose carpentry because it's more like an art, really. And I enjoy the arts. Well, like Joanne said, I never even swung a hammer until I went to college. And I was probably the only person that didn't have any carpentry background in a class of 16 that dwindled down to 8 after the first 2 months. So I stuck it through. I'm now a third year. I'm about 120 hours away from going back for my third block and becoming a fourth year. So that's exciting. And I think that's about my journey. I'm 30 awesome. Plus now. So
you're 30 plus. I like that. So a couple of things that I love about your choices that you made. You came from a small community. You didn't want to stay there or couldn't stay there. Maybe there wasn't enough work for you. You tried retail. I know you worked in retail and saved up your money to go to college. So that's something else that you really researched what it was going to cost you to go I know you lived with some family, which is always fantastic when you can lean on your family when you're going to school. I know I certainly did.
Mhm.
But you really researched what you wanted to do. It wasn't like, for me, I became an electrician because dad's an electrician. But you really researched what you like to work at. And I know, and we'll talk a little bit more about your hobbies, which are carpentry hobbies, but hobbies as well. You knew you wanted to work with your hands. You tried university, too big, too much, and you knew it wasn't the right place for you. So I think one of the great things about these types of conversations is we can talk to young people before they go and perhaps spend more money and get into something that they know they're not really going to love. And hopefully they can, like, I can't imagine if I came right out of high school and went into electrical, my goodness, that would have been a real game changer for me. But I worked retail as well. I worked a lot of different jobs that I didn't need a specific education for, which is also perfectly fine. But I knew I wanted more. I wanted to learn more. Now you're also a painter. You paint for all your friends and family, and you have your own little site that you just put up. So one
Yeah.
of the things you're going to find out from a lot of tradespeople, and I don't know if it's the guys or just the women, but it seems like all the women I know that are in trades also do this other thing. Like, I know a welder. She's a welder, but she also makes metal art. You're a carpenter, but you also make these beautiful paintings. You refurnish all this furniture, repurpose it, build things for your home. And I know when I talked to the group before, we always talked about, like, if you had to move back to St. Anthony tomorrow, you can work building decks, renovations in homes, putting in windows. In a small community, you're a needed person, right?
That's very true.
Like, every time I talk to you when you're home, you're like, yeah, just put on a deck for my uncle. So, these careers, you get to help your family while making money if you decide to charge them, or, just to be able to help in your community. That's a really great thing about skilled trades. I get called all the time to fix lights and lamps and heaters and things like that. And I love being able to helping to do that within my community.
Mhm.
So now you're a carpenter. There's carpenters and there's cabinet makers, right?
Yes.
Or
Yeah.
you tell me about the different types of carpentry, because when I first started out, I thought a carpenter was a carpenter. Like, I didn't know there were different areas.
I mean, there's definitely different sub trades and stuff within the carpentry industry. So, like, cabinet making is a fine art in itself. So it's a little bit more precise measurements than, framing and stuff would be. That's more of a rough carpentry. So I've worked mostly in industrial carpentry. So I'm working on big buildings, schools, warehouses, malls, storage lots, stuff like that. Like, usually doing the foundation work, putting in the steel, and the big thing about it. But I enjoy the finer parts of carpentry a lot more, like the baseboards, the trims, the stuff that makes homes and other things look pretty. So that is what I enjoy most of it all.
So what I get from that, then there's like a carpenter who would be a framer that would frame out a house or would build like forms for concrete. That's carpentry work. And then there's the cabinet makers. And we have a great video on our Office to Advance Women Apprentices YouTube page of Ellen Vandermeulen. And actually her and her husband just did my kitchen cupboards for me. And Ellen's reason to be a cabinet maker was because she didn't want to work outside. And I just thought that was great. She's like, I knew I wanted to be a carpenter, but I didn't want to work outside. So I did cabinetry.
That was one of my must-haves, is that I need to work outside.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And that's what we find. Like, I remember talking to a friend one day, actually in a yoga class. She was the teacher, and I came in and I had my work clothes on and stuff. And she looked at me and she goes, were you working outside today? I was like, yeah. She goes, oh my gosh, it's freezing out. I'm like, no, it's not that bad today. she couldn't believe it. And I was like, oh, we're used to it. We have the best clothes. We got the best long johns. We've got the best gear. Your fingers might get a little bit cold, or your pink nose, or, after you get home from work and have your shower, your cheeks stay pink for a longer time, but because you've been outside. But I really like working outside too. I love the fresh air. I like being out in the weather. It doesn't really bother me. So, I think that's another thing. People think you got to be super hardy. Really, you just have to have the right gear. And especially being here in Newfoundland, if anybody's into hiking, there's no bad weather, only bad clothes. So, I've done a lot of that different stuff as well. And Courtney, so you're doing a lot of commercial work now, but then on the side, are you doing just some smaller stuff for yourself around the house?
Uh, well, I haven't told you this, Joanne, but 2 days before we left to go home for Christmas, our apartment flooded downstairs along with into our own house. So I am currently, or we are currently trying to fix that up. So all the new subfloor is gone. We need to right down to the concrete and 2 feet up to the walls. So
Oh,
that's
wow.
what my project on the side is nowadays. So
So this is another great thing about being in the trades. You can fix your own stuff.
this is true. This is
Yeah.
true.
Yeah. So tell me a little bit about carpentry when it comes to math. Math always comes up as, I probably don't want to be in trades because there's a lot of math involved. So I'd love for you to explain to us about math within carpentry.
Um, well, I don't really know how it's taught in school nowadays, but I equate it to like my grade 10 math. A lot of fractions, adding, subtracting, dividing, multiplying fractions, and being able to read a tape measure, understanding your inches and the divides in between that. Um, and one other thing I like to tell people is the Pythagorean theorem is, when would I ever use this in school? You're thinking, well, it's in carpentry a lot. Um, it's used to plumb and straight up walls. It's used to square out your foundations. It's a very common method that they call the 3-4-5 method, but it's the same.
Okay. So what you're saying is if you're not knocking grade 12 math out of the park, there you can still work at skill trades.
My grade 12 math, yeah, sure.
Yeah. And I always find too, like if somebody gave me something and said, here, sit down and do this on a piece of paper, or they said, here's a measuring tape and do this on a piece of board, I always find like when I'm doing the work on the piece of board, it doesn't seem like math. It just seems like, oh, I'm just doing my job.
Yeah, you're just basically reading.
Right.
Yeah.
So, and I love that. And, I know, certainly when I went through school, this is going to age me, metric had just started. And it's really funny because sometimes on construction sites, everything will be in inches. And I mean, it's probably changed quite a bit, but on the big projects, it's all metric. And it's so funny to watch me work with someone who came all the way up through school with metric. And I'm like, I don't. And they're like, here, Joe, I'll do that for you. So it's really interesting. And,
Yeah.
I always talk a lot about when you are in trades, that you always work as an apprentice, like when you start out. So you're always working with someone else.
Yeah, that's one of the benefits of it all, is that you do get the one-on-one time with your journey person, or you're supposed to, and most places do. But that's where the learning really takes place. Yeah.
So can you just tell us a little bit about maybe some relationships or some people that you've worked with that have really helped you along?
I've had a few good people, and I still keep in contact with those that I don't work with. So I've gotten a good journey person that I still keep in contact with. He was the first one that I had. Um, he was pretty cool. He dragged me along and made sure that I was included in things, right? Because it's a a very male dominated industry that I've chosen. So like sometimes it's not welcoming, but if you get that good person that makes you feel welcomed, it's a great experience.
Yeah. And I always, when I show up on a site too, I always look for that person to be like, okay, who's got my back here?
Yeah. You'd be surprised in some of the people that would have your back. So just give it a chance.
Yeah, absolutely. And I love that you're still in contact with that person. And I as well, I have several of my mentors from 15 years that I still call. And the one fella I call, his name is Greg. I'll be like, "Hi, Greg." And he goes, "What do you got messed up now, Greeley?" And we always laugh. And then I tell him what I'm trying to figure out. So I think the thing of the camaraderie within the trades is very strong. Like people want to see you succeed. People want to see you get your red seal. There's so many people that are just out there in your corner. And, sometimes our families aren't really as supportive as we would love them to be because it may seem really strange to them. I worked for one man, Ted Chalk, and I said, he looked at me, he goes, "So you want to be an electrician?" And I said, "No, no, Ted, I am an electrician. I'm a fourth year." And he couldn't believe, now he's quite an older gentleman, he couldn't believe that I was an electrician. And then when I started working for him, he's like, "My dear, you're some hard worker." And I said, "What did you think was going to happen? I was just going to come and stand up." So sometimes people aren't used to us. Now in his family dynamic, women in his household don't do those types of things. In my family dynamic growing up, if it snowed, all the girls and mom and dad shovel the driveway. If we built a fence, all the girls and mom and dad built the fence. So we really never had those, like someone was sitting in the house watching you shovel. We were out there doing it. And I think that's something really important to remember, that even though some people don't think you can do it, if you in your heart of hearts, you're like, "No, this is what I want to do. I want to give it a shot." And you're able to start out really young, by goodness, go for it, because you just never know where it's going to lead you. I mean, it's led me to now talk about skill trades. And I drag Courtney along all the time because she's so great. And the thing you need to know about Courtney is she is pretty shy, if you haven't noticed yet. So I will also put that out there. If you're a shy person and you're not sure if this is what you want to do, Courtney is a perfect example of someone who is fairly shy, but she really does love her work. So give us a day in the life. Oh, wait, now, Trina, did you have a question?
Yeah, I was just going to say it's a interesting mix in terms of from my own experience or my partner's experience of that uh, being both, whether you think that you're an introvert or an extrovert. I think the trades could easily be for you, because the introvert, you only really see your apprentice all day long. For certain trades, obviously, we're talking 50 plus different trades, so it's going to vary. But then there's also the case that you're going to probably meet someone new every day too, in terms of going to different work sites. Now, my partner's does what do you say, like goes to different people's houses and such. So obviously meeting different people every day is just part of that work. But also for who he spends time with is just like the apprentices and the few people on his team type thing. But while I've got the mic here, because two of you are clearly quite acquainted, you're just going back and forth. So I'm taking this opportunity now. I'm always looking out for unique words to put up for our gamification codes. So Pythagorean is your gamification code. So I'll just leave that up for a moment while everyone figures out how to spell it. But I just loved that reference, because of course everyone, when I was in high school, it was like, when am I ever going to use math in life? When am I ever going to need to know what Pythagoras thought? Well, there you go. You heard it straight from Courtney, a carpenter, that she is using math theory. And it was, you said, like grade 10, so it's not advanced, super, had to do four years of school to get there or whatever. But also just to think about, you're using it so often that, the first time maybe you struggled, but you had your Red Seal journey person there with you. But now you use it maybe every day. I think you might have said certainly every week. So it just becomes second nature at that point, right? So don't sweat those things for the students out there listening. It might seem like a big word and a big theory right now, but it's all good. You can learn anything, and you do it often enough, and it's just second nature. So that was your gamification code, and just a reminder too that if you do ask a question, you get an additional gamification code. So put that into the chat. Yeah, I guess I can hand it back. You were both on such a roll that I think I'll hand it back. But
yes, and anytime you want to interrupt, just put your hand up if anybody wants to ask a question. Again, like I said, we're not only friends, but we've worked together, and we're fortunate we always have good chats about different trades related things. So.
Oh, I did want to ask one. I just remembered the question that I had to ask was, I've kind of come across at CNA this program. I'm just putting it in the chat here, but it's called the Atlantic Trades Business Seal, and it says it's for journey persons to advance their business and leadership skills, gain regional career mobility. It sounds like it's a business program for journey persons to actually make their own business, so that they are. Have you ever heard of that program before?
Yeah.
Anyone using it?
Yeah, there is some. I think there is a gentleman in town who has that seal, and yeah, that's more for after you have decided. Sorry, I've just lost you on my screen and I can't find you. Let me just
We can
see.
still see and hear you, yeah.
Oh,
but it does sound like it's for, you get obviously your journey person first and kind of advance your career, but it just sounded like, if I'm reading it correctly, it's just that idea of growth in your career, that you're not going to just get your Red Seal after your 4 years and kind of plateau.
Exactly. And it doesn't have to be that at all. And I think that's really important for people to understand is you can get your Red Seal and just stay at your Red Seal, have your own business, or you can work for someone else. No big deal. Or you can do that course that will help you along the way, for opening your business, how to do your accounting, how to do, government things as well. So that's something to look into. Okay.
We
If you
do have a question from a student.
Yeah.
I'll put this to Courtney. If you weren't doing the trade you're doing now, what other trade would you have chosen?
I was bouncing back and forth between welding and carpentry. So welding is, a very artistic type of trade as well, and it's quite useful. Like, you can do it, you don't have to do it artistically. Obviously, you can be like mechanic and whatever, but it takes a certain type of skill and a good eye-hand coordination. So that was the one that I was going to do, other than carpentry, only for the fact that I know it gets really hot and stuffy in their helmets and stuff, and I have a full head of hair, so it was kind of a situation where I didn't want to be sweating all that well.
There's not enough room in under the helmet for all your brains and your hair, Courtney.
There you go.
I was thinking about that the other night too. I was like, if I didn't do this one, I think I would do cabinet making or furniture making. I'd love to make furniture. Yeah, that'd be cool. So Courtney, let's give us a life or a day in the life of.
Sure. I'll take you back to one of the ones that I was working at in Ontario. They were a pretty big industrial company. So every day we would meet up and have our safety meetings. Oh, sorry, guys, my battery is low. My bad. Um, you do your safety talks in the morning, and then we had a team of like 25 to 30 people, so that you would all jump aboard your vans and your team of 3 or 4 or 5 or 6 and go off to your jobs, right? And from there, it's just your basic 8, maybe 9, 10 hours of work. There's days that I've had 12-hour days, but that's when you're really pushing to finish something for another trade, because uh, in construction, you're basically working around a lot of other people. So like your schedule goes with the flow, really. So you could put in an 8-hour day one day, a 12 the next, to get something pushed and finished. But most jobs will give you your 2 15-minute breaks, maybe an hour or 30 minutes for your dinner. But it's pretty standard. At the end of the day, if you go back to your station and drop off all your tools or clean out your van and then go home.
And go home.
Mhm.
And sometimes you've got electricians standing next to you going,
Yeah, that's very true. And then the carpenter like me would go behind the electricians and sweep up all their dirt.
and it's really funny because, that's how it works in trades, the carpenters come in and frame out a house, and then they put in the windows. And then once they put in the windows and the roof is on, then the electricians come in and drill all the holes, like if we're building a house. And then we go in and drill all the holes, put all our boxes on. Then we have to wait for an inspector. Then drywallers come back, usually carpenters, drywallers come back. They do their next part. We do their next part. So it always goes back and forth, back and forth. So you do get to work with a lot of different trades.
Mm-hmm.
Yeah. And I always found it interesting. I always learn from other trades, little tricks of, how to do this or how to do that. So that's really cool. Mm-hmm. Let's just see, what's some safety gear that you would use? So, again, last week we talked about electricians. We have to be really careful of electricity. What is it you're really protecting yourself from?
I tend to really protect my feet, my hands, my eyes, and my lungs.
Okay.
So I used to say I used to wear the mask before it was cool. So like some people would really give me a hard time for wearing my mask when I'm just like cutting drywall or removing things. In demo, it gets dusty and dirty and the air gets really thick. You get stuff stuck on your teeth sometimes. So cover your lungs, your eyes, your hands, and your feet for the most part.
Okay, cool.
Hard hat is pretty essential too.
For the safety, I was wondering, heard of a toolbox talk, and I think you just mentioned like a safety talk. Like what?
Yeah, that's
Who
the
runs
same.
that? What kind of do you discuss? Does it kind of look different day to day, or is it, yeah, guys, same thing as yesterday, let's go? Tell me about it.
Sure.
Yeah. I mean, I've had safety toolbox talks that cater to the certain jobs that you're going on. So if it's a new job, then it's a new safety talk type thing. But for a lot of it, it is running over the same things. Don't leave the floor in a mess. No trip hazards. Be careful on your ladder, your 3-point contact. And if you're dealing with different gases as well, like on different sites. So a lot of people won't be allowed to touch certain things. So they'll tell you not to be around it and whatever. But for the most part, it is pretty monotonous and it's the same thing, I would say. I've gotten a lot of safety toolbox talks of just clean up after yourself, wear your eye protection, make sure you're wearing your steel toes. So
Yeah, and then what might happen too, if you were on a larger site, that might be like, okay, today they're going to be installing a tank down in area 233. Stay away from that area. There's no any reason for you to be down there. You know, they've got it roped off. Don't go down there. Or it could be the toolbox talk could be, you know what, it's super sunny outside and it's hot. We've got hydration stations put all around the site. If you need to take a break, get out of the heat, get out of the heat. And the toolbox talks are usually put off by the supervisor. And then sometimes what they'll do, which is always interesting, is, and I mean, this comes from the safety department, is they'll get each person to do their own toolbox talk, like in the morning. So it'll be like, tomorrow, Courtney, you're going to do a toolbox talk and you can talk about whatever you want. But like for electricians as well, we talk a lot about like if we're going to be using tools. So like if Courtney's going to go to the tool crib and get a chop saw, you know, the toolbox talk might be around, check your blade, make sure the tool is working properly, make sure the cord, you inspect the cord that doesn't have any chips out of it. And again, when we're talking about working in industrial sites, we're a lot harder on our tools because we use them a lot more. So whereas some people, you know, their saw might sit there for 6 months and pull it out and cut 3 boards, you know, we're heavy usage. That saw is going all day long. So we need to inspect our tools. And the reason that they keep telling us the same stuff over and over again is because it reminds you that in that minute, if I'm about to drill a hole up into wood and I look up, the first thing I say is, I forgot to put my glasses on, right? So then I go put my glasses on, because if not, you're just like hauling stuff out of your eyes, and you just can't take a chance. And I think too, with carpentry, there's always conversation about lifting, and always have your buddy help you lift and how to lift correctly. They do a lot of, especially the work that Courtney does, they do a lot of heavy lifting. They're lifting, you know, big pieces of wood, or it could be tray or things like that. So they're really just reminders to remind us that, hey, you are working in an environment that you have to pay attention. And I think I mentioned that last week as well. Like if you're on a trade site, you can't be going around looking at your phone all the time. You'll be out in a second. We usually leave our phones in our lunch bags unless you've got an emergency. And you just can't have your head down when there's all these people working around you. You really have to be on your toes. So that is super, super important that way. Let's see, what kind of other questions do we have for Courtney? Courtney, you tell us what you want us to know about what it's like to be a carpenter.
I mean, it's physically demanding. A lot of people, when I come on site, mainly because I'm, you know, a little bit of a thicker girl, they assume that I'm not that strong, maybe. I don't really know, but they're usually astounded with how much I can lift and actually work. So it is like, it does take its toll on its body. So take care of yourself if you do choose to do it. I personally do yoga every day before work. If not, my back would seize up. Like, it's just the harsh reality.
I think no matter what your career is, then yoga's maybe a great idea. I mean, whether you're sitting at a desk all day, that's hard on your body. Lifting, that's
true.
hard on your body. So getting a good fitness routine, good life advice there.
Yeah.
Do you think that there's any misconceptions, or what kind of misconceptions have you come across for like what carpenters do? Or is it kind of like, do people know outside of the trades, there's, you just kind of touched on misconceptions from, we'll say coworkers, what you can do, but like when you tell a new person, oh, I'm a carpenter, do they think they know, and do they know what that means?
Well, I certainly had an idea of what a carpenter was growing up, and I just kind of thought it was just all houses, right? Like you build a house, that's about it. And during my career, I haven't had that experience for actually building houses yet. Like I've done a lot of tearing things apart, a lot of rebuilds. I've dealt with more steel than I have wood. So in the industrial, it's like steel studs instead of wooden studs. So there's a little bit of a tweak in the difference of that. So like an example, when you're studying it with steel studs, you would go on centers. So like your wood stud would go 16 on centers, your steel studs would go 15 1/4 on centers, because of the way that it's structurally sound. I guess steel is a little bit flimsier. It sways more than what actual wood does, so they need less space in between. So then that goes into your insulation. You get different size insulation for steel versus wood as well, right? So like these little things that I didn't realize, there's certain nails that you have to use in certain different types of wood. There's certain screws that you have to use in certain types of steel, right? So those little things I had no idea about when I first got into it. And they're pretty big distinctions between the two.
Yeah, I've got to admit, I definitely just pictured you with wood. I did not have metal in kind of the picture of you at work in my head. So that's a misconception right there, because I would have
Yeah.
thought, yeah, maybe that's more if I want to work with metal, then I have to be a welder. But it goes back to that idea that you had said, you were kind of in between welding and carpentry. So perhaps they weren't, so far apart as you might have even thought then, in that way at least, obviously. A student has a question, and just a reminder to all of the students, we're kind of in the last 15 minutes. We do seem to have lost JoJo. Hopefully she can come back, but otherwise we're still here for another about 15 minutes. So ask your questions for your points. The question that just came in is there anything you recommend or any words of advice for women who are trying to enter a male-dominated trade? It's a big one.
Yeah. Yes, that is a big loaded question. I guess my biggest advice is don't get discouraged. Because it's like you gotta eat a lot of bad apples to get to a good pie type thing, or the frog situation. It goes along with your career as well. I've certainly worked in some places that are bad places. They're bad apples, and it made me not want to continue in my career. But then you get your good apples. Hopefully you can stick on with those and don't let people's doubts, I guess, get in the way, because there will be doubts as a woman in the trades.
Some solid advice, and we talked last week in our second session last week. If anyone hasn't checked it, if you weren't there live or haven't checked out the recording with SOAR at the Murphy Center, we talked a lot about mental health resources too. So if you are in that position that maybe it's you're in a bad apple situation, don't stay there. You can find a better employer. There's a lot of opportunities out there. But B, take care of yourself mentally too. So check out the session, the recording from last week, and we chat about kind of mental health resources, which if you not positive whether they're up yet, but we're working on a resource page for mental health resources as well. Another student question is, what is your favorite part about working in the trades? Would you recommend it to students who aren't sure what to do right after high school?
I always recommend the trades as a career for the young people in my life. I didn't get it as growing up in a small town. It wasn't advertised. Everything was pushed upon getting a university degree to be successful. And I kind of wish that I did have an opportunity to explore the trades when I was a bit younger and be exposed to it, because it is very rewarding. I love my job has basically been the destruction of one thing to make it something else. So I've worked in a lot, like I've worked in the mall in St. John's, in where you take apart a store and it's just moving like 500 meters down the hallway just to a new location, but you rip it apart in one place and then you put it back together in another. And the putting back together is always what's rewarding, like seeing something go from absolutely hideous to beautiful in the end. It's like, I made that. That's cool.
Love it. I love you've talked quite a bit about the idea of art behind carpentry and everything. So I think a lot of people kind of miss that. Maybe not so much with carpentry. I do, in my own experience, associate it with my mother and my grandmother doing woodworking. So pardon me if it's like way off base. It goes back to me imagining you with wood. But my own experience again, my grandmother like built her own front porch because my grandfather was a transport truck driver. He went across the island and she's like, well, I just need this done now. So she just built her own porch. So little personal story there, sorry.
That's the rewarding part of it, right? She built that.
Yeah. And to be able to, it's bragging rights, like me as her granddaughter now, I'm like still bragging for her that she built that porch. So yeah, being able to kind of like show your work in a very physical way is kind of cool. How do you find, I guess, we know skilled trades are booming. We know that there's going to be a lot of jobs coming up in the next decade. There's a lot of jobs now, let alone what's coming up. But do you think carpentry is top of that list, or would you recommend a particular trade if you kind of looked at it and said, where's the labor market demand going to be?
The trades are going to be around forever, in my opinion. The trades are everywhere, from the roads that you drive on to the houses that you live in to the refrigerators that keep your food cold. Like, that's a trade, refrigeration, and it's a very lucrative trade, right? Like, who knows how to fix their refrigerator? Not me. But the trades will be around and they are going to grow more. So we definitely need more women to be represented in the trades, I believe. So if you're ladies, get interested.
Awesome. Was it difficult to be accepted into your program? I know we mentioned last week, for anyone who didn't tune in to last Monday's session, I found out for the first time you can put your name on a wait list like right now, even if you're in grade 7, put your name on a wait list. But for you were kind of bouncing around. Did you have to wait long on that wait list, or?
I kind of chose carpentry because there was no wait list as well. I did look into the welding, like I said, and the one that was closest to me had a 3-year wait list on that. So I was like, nope, not staying for 3 years at Circle K again. So that was a lot of a deciding factor, as well as that I could just go into carpentry. I got accepted right away. So it really kind of depends on how many people are applying for that certain program in that certain school type thing, I believe. And it's always a first come, first serve basis, I'm pretty certain.
Where did you said CNA, but they have 17 campuses in the province. Was that something that was offered, like, or were you living in St. John's at the time, or?
I was living in St. John's at the time, like I still am. But its own carpentry is only offered in Clarenville, Bay Roberts, and Carbonear, I think. So there are certain limitations to the trades because, like, I'm pretty certain there's only 3 or 4 different ones offered in St. Anthony, and carpentry is not one of those, right? So it kind of depends on where to as well. And I did my course in Clarenville because I had family there. So I was able to stay with them and get a little bit of help while I was doing that, right? So it's definitely one of the factors that you have to look into when considering a trade is where that program is offered as well.
Right. And for kind of ongoing courses, do you have to do any, I don't know, fall certification is the only one that comes to mind for me, but I'm pretty sure there's like dozens of these courses. Is that something that you have to worry about?
It's definitely one of the bonuses to have on a resume. So I am certified until 2023 in my first aid, my WMIS, fall arrest, power line hazards, and confined space. So those are certain elements that if I have a confined space certificate, that means that I can go deep down into a well to be fixing something if need be, because I have the proper training or whatever. But it's always a bonus to have it. It's not necessarily essential to get it.
Mhm.
Where do those come from, or like where do you have to actually? I'm not even sure the question I'm asking here because it's foreign to me. But is that an online course? Is that something that is offered through unions, or is it CNA?
A lot of unions do offer the training for it, I believe. CNA gives you WMIS when you do it, but I believe they don't offer the actual certifications for anything else. They'll do the courses with you, but you're not certified afterwards. So unions will pull that off. Other organizations will hold it as well. Like certain companies will bring in people to give it to their employers if they need it, or employees, sorry, if they need it and stuff. So there's a lot of different programs that will certify you for it.
And the Office to Advance Women Apprentices as well will support and help you with that.
Yes, they are the ones that help me do it.
Yeah.
So they're just called certifications, like if you put a title
Safety
on that.
certs. Yeah, safety certifications.
Safety certs.
Yeah.
Okay. Cool. Welcome back, JoJo. We lost you there for a little bit.
Yeah, the old Greens Harbor internet went for a loop for a minute.
We are in the last kind of 5 minutes, so if any students are still out there that haven't asked a question yet and want to get your live points, then now's the time. But in these last kind of 5 minutes, otherwise, I just wanted to ask you both if there's anything you wanted to touch on that we haven't already, or if there's any resources. Again, if anyone didn't join last Tuesday with the Murphy Center, we talked a lot about scholarships. So again,
cool.
check out that recording again for anyone who missed it. But is there any scholarships you know of, any resources that you really want to like give a shout out to, or just any advice that we haven't touched on that you'd like to pass on to the students?
Sure. Courtney, do you want to start?
Sure. I only really have the one shout out, I guess, and that's OAWA. They've basically helped me from the beginning of my trade to in the middle and right now. So they helped me get my certificates, and they helped me get my very first job as well, along with the what's that grant, or
the incentive. Yep.
Yes, there you go. The wage subsidy grant. There you go.
Yeah, and I mean, that's one of the great things that we do at our office, is we have this camaraderie. When people used to gather, we would gather together and talk on a Thursday night, have a coffee. What are you doing? What's coming up? We now do that online. So there is that support. It's just sometimes if you're a woman in the trade, sometimes you might be the only woman out there. So it's really great to be able to come home and be like, Courtney, let's chat. So, you know, to have that support, I think is so, so important. There's lots of opportunities in skilled trades right now. So much opportunity in the next 5 years, 5 to 10 years. A lot of the population of the older generation will be retiring. And my generation was never ever told to go to trade school. So there's a really big gap where we have a whole lot of people who didn't get trained. So, you know, money is great. Hours can be a bit long. The work can be physical. If you work with your hands, you have this instant gratification of seeing exactly what you just built. If you love those things, I mean, carpenters are pretty cool. They're all really relaxed. I don't know, like I say about different trades, they're all different. Like electricians are all like, yeah, I can do that. Carpenters are like, yeah, I can do that. Like it just seem more chill. I don't know what it is. But check out our Office to Advance Women page, please, on YouTube. Check out the videos there. You'll see Ellen Vandermeulen. She's on there, cabinet maker. It's also all kinds of other videos. You can also go on our website, and there's a place where you can put in that you want more information on trades, and we can send you out some information. And we also do career counseling. So all those things.
Awesome. Thank you so much. And of course, JoJo is back next Monday with us, 4 p.m. again. The next 2 Mondays, that is. So that's January 24th and January 31st. And you have your worksheets to complete as well for gamification points. Do we know who's up next, JoJo, at this point?
Yeah, we have lined up for next week Mel Perrin. She is a welder and she's also a car enthusiast. She's a lot of fun and she's super excited about the science behind welding, melting metal to metal. I've actually never seen anybody so excited about it.
That's awesome.
Yeah, and her and her boyfriend are into making hot rod cars. So
there you go. I know.
She's fun. Hey, Courtney.
Yeah, she's pretty cool.
She's pretty cool. Yeah.
Yeah, I know one of the students mentioned an interest in auto mechanics or diesel mechanics. So hopefully I know she's a welder, but kind of the extension of that is the interest in cars. So we'll see how that goes.
Yeah, absolutely. And thank you again so much for inviting us to come today for your STEM girls. It's always a pleasure. It's always a pleasure for me to talk to young people about skilled trades because it wasn't talked about when I was, you know, in the high school back then. And I want to thank Courtney, who is always available to me, bless her heart. When I call her and be like, hey, I want to do this thing. And I think Courtney kind of feels the same way. If this was something she had known about sooner, she probably would have jumped in sooner. Am I right?
Yes, yeah.
Awesome. Well, thank you both so very much. And I'll see JoJo next week. Thank you, Courtney. I hopefully will see you again at some point. And I'll see the students on Wednesday with Skills Canada to discuss their programs and their competitions, which are like so fun. You really need to get involved in that.
If you're interested in trying any type of a skilled trade, go through Skills Canada. They are amazing. They're so cool. I do volunteer work with them as well.
Sweet.
Awesome.
Have a great week, everyone.
Thank
Signing
you.
off.
Bye-bye.
Thanks. See you.
Yeah.